there's an amazing flexibility to this orchestra. There's a there's kind of this just joyful quality on stage.
Well, thank you guys so much for being here today. Thank you to Peter Otto for joining me. He is now the concertmaster of Nashville Symphony, coming to us from the Cleveland Orchestra. Peter, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Yeah. I won't ask you a ton of questions about your bio because our readers and viewers can go to the National Symphony website and look at your bio of all the amazing things that you've done. But graduate of the Juilliard School, you were in the St. Louis Symphony, you've been guest concertmaster for several orchestras, and you are coming to us as the Cleveland Orchestra. So the Nashville Symphony attracts many different, kinds of audience members. Some who are not as familiar with the classical orchestral world. So, my first question for you is, what are just like bare minimum kind of explaining for those that don't know some of the aspects of your role as a concertmaster?
There's kind of a more in general, more basic answer to that question, which is concertmaster essentially is in charge of very mundane things like bowings. So for those of
Right.
you who don't know what bowings are, it's kind of someone has to determine, to put it bluntly, what direction the bows go in. So we're all kind of in sync. That's why we always look so beautifully in sync, like synchronized swimming in a way. And it has bowings also have musical consequences, so it just also sounds different. So that's a lot of what I do. I obviously am the leader of my own section, so I sit in front of the first violin section, and so I lead my section, which means in rehearsals I make sure that everyone is playing together, that everyone is using the same articulation, is in the same part of the bow. I kind of have to quickly address problems as they come. Um, in a larger sense, I'm kind of, I don't want to say in charge, but um, I can kind of chime in where the entire string section is concerned as well. In a slightly more metaphysical sense, the concertmaster, um, he's kind of he or she is kind of a liaison often between the conductor and the orchestra. My job becomes much easier when there's a very good conductor. So this is what I've noticed in my years of being concertmaster. The less skilled a conductor is, or the less experienced, the harder my job is, because you have to kind of function as the leader, you know. So in an ideal world, it's more of a symbiotic relationship between the conductor and the concertmaster, because I have to translate his movements, because a conductor, I mean, I'm stating the obvious, but a conductor does not make any sound. So I have to translate his movements into sound somehow. So um, I kind of have to set the tone for the string section. Someone has to decide, what this means. Like what does that mean? When do you play? So someone has to interpret that and um, kind of translate it through body language, gestures to the rest of the string section. So that's kind of in a nutshell, I think, what my job is.
Yeah, yeah, much more than walking out and tuning the orchestra. Such
Oh,
a
yes, I forgot that. Yes,
yeah,
I see. That's so minor that I even forgot. That's what everybody sees. But yeah,
yeah, yeah, but it's so much more than just that. It's like, yeah, if you are not good at your job, it doesn't just affect you, it affects the whole orchestra. So your role is so pivotal in helping an orchestra be a
yeah.
good orchestra.
And I think that with a lot of things, people don't realize um, if you're doing a good job, like you said, people don't really know because everything just seems to be going normal or smoothly. It's when you're not doing a good job that things start to kind of, and it's a lot about I've known this orchestra for quite some time, and so it's about building trust. So nothing works without trust. So you can't. It's like with any leadership position, you can't come in and just expect to lead and people to follow. Like I'm not that kind of person either. So I think um, you have to trust people that are in your section, and they have to trust you, or else none of it works. So you have to play with them, and they have to be willing to take your guidance.
That's a great point to bring up. Sure. Yeah. Yeah, you shared I don't know if it was recently, but when you first played with the Nashville Symphony, that the orchestra was very warm and welcoming and there was kind of this immediate connection and spark. So can you speak a little more to what that experience was like for you that first time with the orchestra and then how important that connection, that spark is for a concertmaster with an orchestra and with a conductor?
Yeah. So it's funny because I have two completely separate experiences with the Nashville Symphony because the first time I came was in 2010. So I was invited just to be a guest. I wasn't really looking to be concertmaster at that point because I had just gotten to Cleveland. But it was actually the week the hall flooded in 2000.
Whoa.
I was guest concertmaster. It was the infamous Mahler Five, which seemed the most apocalyptic performance of my lifetime. And I was back then and now when I came back in actually exactly a year ago, I came back for my first kind of exploratory week to see if I wanted to do this. Um, so basically 13 years after my first time, I had the same kind of experience and I wasn't expecting to. I thought, well, the orchestra's so different now. It's gone through COVID. I don't really I probably barely know anyone. Nobody's left. But even even so, I just felt there's an amazing flexibility to this orchestra. There's a there's kind of this just joyful quality on stage that you often gets lost with professional orchestras, I think. They get, kind of jaded in a way, or it gets too routine or something. And I always felt that here, um, the musicians are just very, very responsive and they're very respectful. And the rehearsals here are extremely quiet. I mean, much quieter than any other orchestra I've worked with. I mean, I thought it was just going to be like, people on their phones, like I hear about from no, people are so attentive and so quiet and so respectful and um, things get fixed almost immediately. Like there's this level of professionalism and yes, and the chemistry I was talking about was um, I think I have a similar approach to music as a lot of people do in this orchestra. So I think kind of you are in service to the music. We're not trying to like rape the music. You know what I mean? We're here for the music. And that's like the overwhelming feeling I got. And that's still there after all these years. So it's really nice.
Yeah, that's really, really cool. It's cool to hear you describe it like that, like being in service of the music, because I think that's so important and integral and can get lost so often
Yeah.
in professional. Um, are there any concert masters of the past that you have looked to recently for inspiration in your own career?
That's a good question. Um, I have admired many concert masters of the past, and I have poured over their videos and poured over their recordings and all that stuff. But kind of the older I get, I realize that you cannot ever imitate anyone, you know. Um, God knows I tried when I was younger, and it was a disaster. Um, we had Bill Prusel in the Cleveland Orchestra. There was, um, Daniel Majewski, who was the concertmaster before. Um, Obviously, the great concertmasters of like Berlin Philharmonic. There was Michael Schwalbe, and there was Joseph Gingold, also of the Cleveland Orchestra, and all these people. But everybody, aside from just the violin playing, every one of these people has a different physicality and a different way of expressing music physically. So it's not just about playing. So when you start trying to lead like someone else, it's kind of it never quite works, and I really had to find my own path. So for me, what really works is um, I take myself back a little bit, and I see myself as a member of the section first and foremost. So I play with my section, and then I um, I lead when I need to. And in the past, there's often been the concertmaster was often this kind of alpha male who is just kind of almost like angrily beating their way through the concert, and I'm just not that, and I could never be that. So I've had to kind of find my own way, and I would say that um I aspire to lead with quiet confidence. So it's not the most bombastic or kind of um, showy kind of leadership. I'm much more interested in getting everyone to play together. That the Everyone comes together and is kind of inspired um, to find be on the same page, then I think I've done my job well. But yes, I have looked. I am very inspired by all the concertmasters, great concertmasters of the past. Joseph Silverstein. I mean, sometimes their playing is just so amazing. David Nadine of the New York Philharmonic.
Yeah.
Um, but it's never worked for me to imitate their leadership style. I take inspiration from their musicianship, but once you get put in that chair and you're sitting there, you realize you can't follow anyone else. You can't really imitate. You just have to find your own way. It's a lot of
Yeah.
experience and a lot of um, trial and error, I think, as well. And also, I remember um, I started in I started my orchestral career in the St. Louis Symphony back in the I was in the back of the first violin section. And I remember, you know, well, back then I was just so happy to have a job, and it was stressful because I was learning all this new repertoire. But years later, when I finally got into the Cleveland Orchestra and I was in my leadership position, I remembered my time in the St. Louis Symphony sitting back there thinking, wow, this is really hard sitting back here. Like you just it's like you're swimming sometimes. All you hear is the people around you. You don't necessarily hear what you're supposed to hear from across the stage, and you need the concert master. You need your leaders. You need the people in front of you, just simply to be able to hear and to be able to figure out where you're supposed to play. I remember sometimes sitting on a riser on the last stand of first violins. Like I felt like I was just like left out to dry. I felt like I was sitting in the audience, frankly. And so that's when I kind of learned what a concert master does and what you need them for. And so I'm always kind of thinking about, what do people need to see and what do they not need to see? I'm not here to put on a show. I just really want to help, and I want to make sure everybody knows what they have to do.
Hmm. Such a good and important aspect of leadership. Right.
When I started, you're like concert master, and you do get a little bit of this like power tripping thing, you know what I mean? But now, um, I've done it been playing concertmaster on and off for like 16 years, so it becomes something different. It becomes less about kind of your ego and look at me and all this stuff. It just becomes more about making sure the overall performance is great. So you kind of find your role in all of it as the years go by.
I was just going to ask if you had any sort of pieces of wisdom or things that you learned from your previous experiences that have directly influenced the way that you read as a concertmaster.
That's a good question too. Um, from the beginning, always realized was orchestra is only fun. 'Cause I actually always hated. I never wanted to be in an orchestra, and I thought this was. And then, but then once I got into the orchestra, I was like, oh my gosh, this is kind of amazing. Um, it's only fun if you're actually prepared, and if you know, um, if you not only know your part, but it's also much more fun for you to just you knowing your part is the bare minimum. You should kind of. That's why that's the thing I enjoy the most in rehearsal. I'm hopefully prepared that in the rehearsal I can enjoy other people's parts and see how
Mm.
my part fits into that. And um, so it's when you're young, I think it's mostly um, people are mostly centered and focused around auditions. So if you're taking auditions, it's easy to get stuck into this like I only practice my part. Um, I don't know the rest of the piece. You know what I mean? I don't even know. I remember my first couple auditions, I didn't even know the entire movement I was playing. I only knew the little excerpts. I didn't know what came before, and I didn't know what came after. And then there were all these like fuddy-duddies like me telling my younger self, you have to know the piece, you have to know the whole piece. And I was always like, oh, come on, with old people telling me you need to know the whole piece. It doesn't matter. It actually now that I've sat on audition committees on the other side, you can tell when someone knows what's going on and when they don't. Like it's not some weird metaphysical, we're reading, we're projecting onto. No, it's like you can tell when the person knows the piece. And, um, it's not only that, I learned very quickly in orchestra that you have to learn the language. You have to learn the sound language of a composer, and it requires slightly different techniques and all that stuff. And that's something you don't necessarily learn in school, I feel like. I got my biggest musical education when I started playing orchestra. I suddenly my eyes were open. I thought, oh, the classical music repertoire isn't just violin concertos.
Right.
Suddenly I was confronted with all the Brooklyn symphonies and all the stuff that I never was all that interested in, shamefully. And so it just kind of expands your range and it expands your grasp of everything. You know, uh, sometimes if I went out the night before and I didn't have time to practice or something, I go to rehearsal and not be prepared. It's hell. It's hell. It's much worse to be
Yep.
unprepared. And actually, like if you take the time to love what you're doing and to just really honor these pieces and honor these composers by just taking the time to getting to know it and preparing your part and sit down with a score once in a while or something. It just makes the whole thing so much more enjoyable, and it makes it like a kind of worthwhile endeavor, I think. I don't know if
So
that
much more fulfilling.
I don't even remember your question. I'm just rambling.
Yeah, no, pieces of wisdom. I mean, you just shared so much. Last night was your first performance as
Yes.
concertmaster. Oh, correct. How did it go? How did it feel? What was it like?
It was it was wonderful. It's ironically, I played, this is like the eighth week I've played with them. So it's like
Okay.
my official start date was um, this week, but I have played with them like several weeks before. So it was kind of nice just to kind of be officially in the saddle, because I came here for my three, um, I guess you would call them trial weeks, starting last January. So that was 3 weeks last season. And then I played on the three recordings that we did this season. So end of October and in November. So actually, yeah, this is my seventh week. But it was nice. It was a really nice toast afterwards, and I got to speak. I got to just tell everybody how grateful I was to get my third act, so to speak, in my career. So it was really, really wonderful.
Yeah, that's awesome. I heard the crowd went crazy for the Mussorgsky. And I just am wondering what is your favorite?
My favorite part of the Mussorgsky. Hmm. I think to me, I know this is cheesy, but I really like the the Gate of Kiev movement. It's just I feel like the whole piece builds towards that climax.
Hmm.
That's when I just like I lose my marbles when we get
Right. It's so
yeah,
good.
I I just get so emotional whenever we get there. I think so much of the piece is wonderful. I love the um what's it called? Vecchio Castello, the one with the saxophone.
Yes, yeah.
So beautiful. So many of them, but I'm always like waiting to get to that last to the last section where we can just like wail away and come ridiculous.
Yeah, that's awesome. Um, I would love to hear a little bit more about yeah, what's it like, what it has been like for you to work with Guerrero, just how that relationship has influenced kind of um your experience.
Oh, sure. Well, I've known him since 2008. So he was actually, I was just telling the story last night at the little section. He actually conducted my first major solo with the Cleveland Orchestra. I mean, I'm talking like a concertmaster solo. So it was at Blossom, and I played throughout the season. I played my first season. I played some smaller solos, but at Blossom, it was Rimsky-Korsakov Capriccio Español solo, and with Cleveland Orchestra, so I'm like shitting myself basically. And he was so kind, I mean, it was the perfect person. He was so kind and he was so um beloved there, and so that's when I first met him. And after that, he then invited me to be guest concertmaster in Nashville. I brought the floods to Nashville. And then and then he basically guest conducted in Cleveland, like I want to say almost every season. And then he was principal guest conductor of our Miami residency. So I worked with him, I want to say like 14, 15 times in Cleveland. So we became friends. And then um, yeah, so then when this position became open, I already was kind of looking for a change, and I wanted to kind of explore a different model life a little bit. Like I wanted to maybe diversify my career a little bit. also have a little bit more time off to explore things that I want to do my own projects, also have more time for family. So this kind of seemed like a really interesting option for me. So I called him up and I asked him, and he said, "Come down, just play with us a couple times." So that was that. And
Yeah.
he's really he really loves music. I mean, I feel like that's such a weird thing to say, but I almost feel like a lot of conductors don't love music anymore. Like they just kind of they have their way that they do things and it never changes. But he just is always exploring, and he's very passionate, and he always is going right to the heart of things and looking for the correct expression and looking for um, how can we make this more impactful. We get along really well, and I think we just kind of we almost have like a shorthand, like we can just communicate like super quickly and clarify things, and it's very easy and very smooth.
That's great. Yeah. Yeah, he's so fun to watch. I've learned so much just being in the audience from his conducting and his musicianship leading the orchestra. So you said you wanted to have some more time for your own projects. You do have a recital coming up with the
Yes.
Nashville Symphony, um, June 24th, if I'm not mistaken. Can you give us any details about the recital, like what you might be playing on it, or some of the projects that you're looking forward to as you make this change?
Yes. So the recital came about um, because, and I didn't even know this, but I learned this, but there's a new series called the Artist Spotlight series, I think,
Hmm.
and they asked me to play one of the concerts, and in the big hall. So I don't think I've ever played a recital in a hall like that size.
Hmm.
Usually it's in like a smaller recital hall, so that's its own kind of challenge, I think. And then I had to, because I just moved here, um, I had to find a pianist, and I didn't know if I was gonna use someone from Cleveland or whatever. So I found a wonderful pianist. His name is Robert Koenig, and he is, I think he's professor of collaborative piano at University of California, Santa Barbara. But he's married. His husband lives in Nashville and is a
Okay.
country music producer. So he actually has a has a deep connection to Nashville. So it's kind of nice to play with a semi-local pianist. And yeah, so I'm going to be playing some of my favorite music. It's going to be Respighi Sonata for violin and piano, the Brahms A major sonata, which I haven't played since I was about 2019. So I'm looking forward to revisiting that. And then I'm playing two modern contemporary works. My heart kind of beats for the contemporary stuff too. So I'm playing a piece called La Folia by Christoph Penderecki, and he wrote that for Anna Sophie Mutter in 2014. It's a solo violin piece, crazy hard, and it's going to be a challenge, and I can't wait. Um, and then the other piece I'm going to play is by Esa-Pekka Salonen, who's mostly known as a conductor. He's now the music director of the San Francisco Symphony. He's also a first-rate composer. So he wrote a violin solo piece called Lachen verlernt, which is German for laughing unlearned. So it's based on a little story from Pierrot Lunaire, where this woman goes to Pierrot Lunaire and she wants him to help her find her laughter again because she's lost the skill of laughing. So it's a strange, wild piece, slightly demonic, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, so two solo pieces and two sonatas with piano.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I can't wait for that myself. That'll be so cool. Um, I'd love to hear a little bit more about the instrument that you play on, how long you've had it, and just what you love about your particular violin.
So I have a I've been playing since for about a year now. I've been playing on an Eduardo Marchetti. It's a relatively modern Italian violin built in 1926. Um, until that point, I actually played a Guadagnini. Um, but my Guadagnini I've had for 20 years. Um, I got it in I think 2004, and as a lot of as often happens with instruments that you've had a long time, as you get older, your playing changes and your technique changes, your musicality changes. So
Sure,
even though it's an amazing um, old Italian violin in like mint condition, it just was seemed like it was almost too big and too wide, and I just couldn't make my way around it quite as easily anymore. So I actually sold it and was looking for something. Um, I was looking for something mainly that I could abuse a little bit more in terms of my contemporary music.
yeah,
I felt a little bit guilty, that
sure,
I play some crazy stuff. I play really if it's not like me screaming and um having to make weird bodily noises. I'm scraping and I'm so
sure.
yeah. I felt very bad for my Guarani after a while. And like I said, it was just something in my playing must have changed. I used to be um when I was in my 20s, I used to be a very athletic player, and that's kind of changed. I've become more um I think I get more to the heart of things now. I used to be very kind of the harder, the faster, the better, very Juilliard kind of thing. Um, yeah, so I think my violin sounds amazing, and it definitely has a soul, even though it's a modern violin, but it's been played on a lot. So that's often the biggest issue with modern violins. You don't really know what they sound like for they really are going to sound like until they've been played for 60 years. So this one fortunately is not that modern. It was from 1926, so it's been played on quite a bit. So I've been very happy with it so far, so good.
That's cool. That's awesome. So those are most of the questions that I wanted to ask you. Um, I have a little fun speed round at the end, just some short questions
Okay.
um, to ask for viewers, readers to know you.
Right.
So if you're ready, we'll dive into that. Okay. Who is your favorite composer? And
Tchaikovsky.
if Tchaikovsky. Yeah. I was gonna say if it's too hard, you can kind of do some
No,
eras.
I don't know. I was like, am I really going to say that? People are going to be like, what? You just talked about contemporary. I love, I have no explanation. Tchaikovsky has always just been since I was little, like my parents would put on Tchaikovsky and I would just sit there and my
Yeah.
tongue. Yeah. I
Keep
don't know.
drooling.
I think it's just emotionally very, very honest music. And I
Yeah,
just relate to it.
awesome.
Second,
Um,
close second to Tchaikovsky is Brooke.
okay, yeah, yeah, some great stuff. What is your favorite Concertmaster solo?
Favorite concertmaster solo. It's not the best known one, but I really love, and it's not even really a violin solo, but in the Carmen, um, in the suite that Bizet wrote for Carmen, one of the movements, one of the arias is a violin solo. The Michaela aria,
Hmm.
that is my favorite.
Yeah.
I cried when I made myself cry when I played. How pathetic.
Okay. I was gonna ask if you've gotten to play it or if you just heard it,
Yeah.
but you have.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, this one's kind of fun. If you had to play another instrument, what would it be?
Harp.
Harp.
Yeah.
Good answer.
I always wanted to play harp, but my everyone said little boys don't play harp. So I know, isn't that
Well, it's good stuff.
like early 80s, little boys don't play harp. That was the end of that.
Yeah, yeah. And then lastly, what's your favorite violin concerto?
Favorite violin concerto. I feel like this is such a boring answer, but my favorite violin concerto is and has always been Brahms concerto.
Yeah,
And I say
it's
that
so.
boring because I've gotten to know so many that I love and so many modern ones and ones that came before and after. I mean, there's Britten, there's Walton. I've played so many, but Brahms always just gets me every time. I mean, that opening makes me just want to like eat my breath. So it's still just to me the most impactful opening and the hardest, frankly, opening of any violin concerto. And
Yeah.
it's been my audition piece, so
Okay.
I know intimately.
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
had
Talk about playing what you love.
many successes and many failures with Brahms concerto. So we're like frenemies.
I think every musician has at least one piece where they're like, I love you, but I also hate you.
I tried to switch at one point when I was auditioning and stuff. I tried to switch because everybody would tell me it's kind of suicidal to play Brahms concerto in auditions with no accompaniment, especially. It's so harmony based, so pianistically based, and the melody's missing, and you're just kind of weaving around. And if one note is out of tune, it's just like you might as well just walk off stage and go home. But I tried playing Sibelius one time and I just felt like a fraud. Like Brahms is my thing. Always has been.
Well,
And I'm not
yeah.
it's one of those pieces, and this is what I always tell my students. It's like you're never gonna play anything perfectly, right? Like perfection is not even it's not a consideration, but I feel like if you know something, there's something to be said for knowing something so intimately that you even know all the possible mistakes you could make because you've already made them. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I'm never surprised by anything that goes wrong in Brahms concerto. I'm like, oh, this again. Okay, fine. Who cares?
Very cool. Wow. Well, thank you again so much for your
Thank
time
you.
today.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's been lovely. And yeah, people can find you at the National Symphony. They have so many concerts coming up this season and this summer. And hopefully they'll also catch your recital in June.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, they even have they have student tickets. So students can get discounted tickets and they're doing a lot of things for our community. So we're very grateful for the Nashville Symphony and very grateful for you um for being willing to come. We're excited to see all the things that you'll do with the Nashville
Yeah, thank
Symphony.
you. I'm so glad to I'm looking forward to just exploring the city and getting to know everybody, and please come say hi. Um, I don't bite. And just it's really nice to get to know, the patrons and the donors and just the everyone who comes to the concerts. And one of the things I love about the Nashville Symphony is that the programming, everything is so diverse. You know what I mean? There's so many different avenues that they explore. And that's new to me. Like I'm used to every week being a classical week.
Mm-hmm.
And, um, it wears you down and kind of it's very difficult to maintain that kind of level of enthusiasm. You know, you're playing a Bruckner symphony on Sunday afternoon, and then Tuesday morning you're playing Mahler, and it just keeps going and going. So here, there's kind of you have breathers in between, and there's just all different kinds of um, wonderful programs for everyone. So please come.
Yeah, there really is something for everyone,
Yeah,
which has been it's definitely one of the strengths of the orchestra. I think. Yeah, that's great. Well, thanks so much for joining us today.
yeah,
We'll hopefully see you at the symphony.
yeah. Thank you so much.
All right, take care.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.